That might be something that Chief Mayo was familiar with, the setup of Charlotte Mecklenburg's fire. I see that they have like a City of Charlotte fire department, so it might not be.
I was going to say Trey will probably know
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, there are only 2 county fire departments in the state of North Carolina, Forsyth County and New Hanover County. All the others outside of municipal fire departments in unincorporated areas rely on contracts with various volunteer fire departments, which are incorporated nonprofits.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief Mayo, if you could send something to your staff, letting them know not to use the Teams link and use the Zoom link. We've got at least one person trying to get through on Teams. And just a note, we have not officially started the meeting yet. We're going to let a few more people come in here, probably get started as we normally do around 9:03-ish. We'll say good morning to the folks. Several folks have joined in here. See, Hayseta as well has joined us, and James Cena. So good morning to y'all.
Morning. Morning.
So good morning to Sheila too. She popped in as well.
Good morning.
All right.
So we will give it just one more minute and then we will get started. And if folks join us, they can pop in as we come along. Good morning to everyone else joining, particularly Fred. Good morning as chair of CBAC.
Good morning.
Fred.
I believe we will go ahead and get started today. Fred, I will ask what is your pleasure. You are the chair. You may sort through the agenda, or as we've done in the past, I can kind of run through it however you would prefer.
I would prefer if you run through it just like we always do.
Absolutely wonderful. So good morning to everyone. Welcome to the January meeting of CBAC. Hopefully a few more people will join us as well from the Citizens Budget Advisory Council. On the agenda today, we do have Fire Chief, and as you can see, many of his employees there in Fire Admin to run you through and begin talking about the work plan as it relates to safety and training and logistics. Chief Mayo has a presentation, very illustrative with lots of pictures that we will go through. Feel free to ask him any questions you have during that presentation. We will have some time after that as well to discuss any themes that you see, any additional research that you'd like us to do. At the end of every annual work plan for CBAC, there is a report that goes to council, and so we can start to think about recommendations or start to think about things that you would like to see in a more tabular or chart-based format so that you can see some of the differentiation between what Chief showed you with what we might see here in Winston-Salem versus some of the counterparts that they've done research on. So we'll have some time to discuss that. And then the Chief will tell you In our February meeting, we'll move on and talk about a couple of other components of this. So without any further ado, what I will do is turn this over to Chief Mayo, and I will allow him to introduce the staff that he has, as well as there are several folks from the fire department on this meeting with us.
Good morning again, everybody. It's good to see you. And thanks again for this opportunity. I'll introduce some folks. Deputy Chief Jerry Hardison is with us this morning. He is the Deputy Chief of Operations, so he coordinates activities between the operations branch, the training branch, and the logistics branch. And then also with us this morning is Acting Assistant Chief Ed Duffield. He is our Acting Assistant Chief of Training. And I'm looking for Assistant Chief Daryl Sawyer, but I don't see him. He is our Assistant Chief of Logistics. As Scott mentioned, I have some slides to run through, and I'm going to share those now. And if that's working for everybody, I will proceed.
Looks good, Chief.
Okay, thanks. If you saw us, and hang on just a second, let me move something over here. Get it out of my way if I can. If you saw us at the November Public Safety Committee meeting, I produced this slide that day. So in regard to our training branch, if you look at us compared to our peers in the state, we don't compare to Charlotte. They are the 15th largest. They're not the 15th largest fire department, but they are the 15th largest city. But they are so much larger than everybody in the state. We really don't compare to them. We typically benchmark with Durham, Greensboro, Raleigh. Sometimes we look at Cary and Asheville, but when you get to Cary and Asheville, you're looking at organizations that are some smaller than we are. But we had no training branch in this fire department in modern history, as far as I know, until 2022, when we got a second authorized position. That is the position, there's a battalion chief position authorized in the training branch. But up until then, what we called the training branch was nothing but a chief officer. There were no training staff. There's no recruiting staff, and this continues. There's no live fire training facility in the city. We have to go to the Precise Tech's facility up at King for live fire training. We only have classrooms here in the city. No burn or medical labs. We have to dig for funding for recruit classes out of existing operating funds. Sometimes the budget helps us move some money around to fund these recruit classes. But I think the most stark part of this slide is the fact that our training branch is staffed with 2, when our peers are staffed with about a dozen, on average, with our peers in the state.
Hey, Trey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what do those, say, 12 people that Raleigh have do that, what do they do that you can't do with 2 people?
They are running their recruit class inside. They are recruiting. They are doing in-service training. They are running the fire department's medical response program. There is a full slate of things that other departments are doing that we are either not doing, or we are doing it in a piecemeal fashion.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In terms of the logistics branch, you see something very similar here, our staffing relative to our peers. And this logistics branch staffing, 4 of these positions, these authorized positions, are apparatus mechanics. So again, we're back to, what we would call a logistics branch being one person taking care of 21 facilities, a fleet of about 35 fire apparatus. In total, mobile and portable radios, 300 or 400 radios, 14.5 miles of hose, hundreds of self-contained breathing apparatus units and the air bottles that go with them. It is way more than one person could ever dream about doing. So again, we do it in piecemeal fashion, or we just simply don't do what our peers are doing. And I have some photographs of our apparatus maintenance facility. It is a relic from the public safety era. So for a little history lesson, up until 1980, and I don't know when it started, I know when it ended. So we were a public safety agency until 1987. And public safety agencies, we were one, Chapel Hill was one, Durham was one, Greensboro was one. I'll tell you how you can tell public safety, the legacy of public safety agencies. If you are in a municipality in North Carolina and their police department is running both blue and red warning lights, that is a former public safety agency. That is a trait of those public safety agencies. If you see law enforcement agencies, police departments running straight blue lights, they are not legacy public safety agencies. So in the public safety model, typically two people would take a fire truck to a fire, and police officers would meet the fire crew there, and police officers carried structural firefighting gear in the trunks of their cars, and they would get suited and booted, and they would join the fire crew for fire control operations. And it never worked. It was nothing more than an effort to reduce labor costs. It was never, ever a viable option for providing fire services. It's too much to be skilled at. The response times are not good. And eventually everybody who was doing it abandoned it most of them in the 80s. But when we abandoned that model in 1987, there was never a strategic plan put in place to bring us from the public safety model to a modern fire department. And we are still struggling with living in facilities and design of that public safety model. And the apparatus maintenance facility is one of those relics. We still have 10 of our 20 fire stations are still relics of the public safety model, where they were designed for 2 people and an engine, and we have in some cases 7 or 8 people and an engine and a ladder company in those fire stations. But back to the apparatus maintenance facility, because of its size, it is our #1 source of OSHA violations. They do not have adequate storage for inventory and control of parts. They cannot work on, some of our fire trucks are large enough now that they can't get them inside the station to work on them. They have to work on them outside in the cold, the heat, the rain, whatever's going on. And I have some photographs to paint that picture more eloquently probably than I can. And from here on, we're on pictures. And I think I made Scott and this is terrible. Scott and his staff a little bit queasy when I sent all these photographs over, but I promise not to linger on. Janice has had a mental lapse this morning. But this is what our apparatus maintenance facility looks like. Just 2 bays. This is on Palmer Lane next door to Fire Station 5. You can see here just how jammed up it is. And these are not staged photographs. I asked somebody, I said, look, I need some photographs from the apparatus maintenance shop, and this was what was down there on the day they took the pictures.
Chief Mayo, for context, I do believe CBAC actually went down and saw this facility maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that.
I remember somebody coming down for a tour when Patrice, I think, was the budget director. Yes.
Yes.
It was pre-COVID, so it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago. So some of this may look familiar to you. This is a parts room, parts and supplies in a mechanical room. We've got stuff shoved in every nook, corner, crevice, cranny that we have. This is in a mechanical room with water heater and electrical panels. Same thing in another room. Similar, it's just similar space, just stuff shoved where we can get it. This is a rear view of the facility. You see tires and various things, oil sitting outside. We have a number of accessory buildings down there to hold tires and various parts and pieces. This is not the way you would expect a modern career or municipal fire department to be operating. This is very much like you would expect to see a volunteer rural fire department operating. This is just what, these are all frontline units that are parked down there awaiting service. This is one view kind of looking out the back and to the left of the shop. This is actually parked, this is behind the shop. We have it on our mind. So at Fire Station 3, we are replacing Fire Station 3 with 2018 bond money, and the old Fire Station 3 is on an adjoining lot. It will be torn down, and we will request funding for a warehouse facility on that lot in an effort to have parts and pieces and supplies and equipment in one place where we can have better inventory control. This is, we have turnout gear in the Beatty Center on the first floor. This is an unconditioned space. We have mold, mildew problems down there. We are not the only ones that have access to this space. Things get missing, broken, turned over. Again, this is not the way you would expect a modern municipal career fire department to be operating. This is on the second floor of Beatty. Now, this is a space that we do control. And you can see that it is much more organized, but again, this is unconditioned space. So we have to be careful what we put in there. On a day like this, it's probably 50 degrees in that space. The third week in August, it may be 80 or 85 degrees in that space.
Chief, for context, when you mentioned some of these areas, so like Station 3, you might want to say where Station 3 is, and then Beatty is closer to downtown off of Patterson, but just letting folks know kind of general direction in case they're not aware of where the names of the facilities are.
Yeah, thank you for the prompt. So Fire Station 3 is on Liberty Street in front of the airport, and the Beatty facility, that's the Alexander Beatty Public Safety Training Facility that is on Patterson Avenue in the 1200 block. We're still on the second floor of Beatty here. We do SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus maintenance at Fire Station 5 on Palmer Lane off of Clemensville Road. You see accessory buildings. This slide kind of got blown up here when I blew it out to the margins, but if you look down at the bottom, you'll see some black 5-gallon cans that have little white caps on with wings. That is gasoline that we store, probably 100 gallons at the time. We have that stored in an accessory building, various tools and parts and pieces hung in this building. You see SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, pack frames up on the wall to the left there, more gasoline sitting on the floor. Station 11 is where we do, and in a properly staffed, equipped, and outfitted logistics branch, all this stuff will be done in a central location. You would not be doing self-contained breathing apparatus at 5 and hose at 11 and turnout gear at 19. This would all be in a centralized location where you're doing it with 8 to 5 employees for consistency, inventory control. And that is, we do it, as I mentioned earlier, in piecemeal fashion. We do hose at Fire Station 11. Here's an accessory building that must be 40 or 50 years old. I mean, these people walk out the back door of their residence here, come out on the porch for coffee in the morning, and this is what they look at in their backyard. This is hose stored in these accessory buildings. This is our newest facility, opened May 4th, and we're storing stuff on the bay floor at Fire Station 13. This is on Bethel Methodist Church Lane off of Burke Mill Road. We do helmets at Station 18. Station 18 is at the corner of Peace Haven and Robin Hood behind the Lowe's Foods Shopping Center. We store turnout gear in various crooks and crannies, and in this case, a mechanical room at Fire Station 19. 19 is on Glen High Road, way out on the east side of town. We have a storage facility rented on Clemensville Road, there at the corner of Clemensville Road and Stratford Road. More hose here, getting ready to go in service than we had capacity for at Station 11. We have antique fire apparatus that either belongs to the city or is on permanent loan to us from Old Salem that we don't do a real good job of preserving, and we have no way to display it. We have, this is in our administrative offices where we have boxes and totes, and this is in the assistant chief of logistics office, with boxes of t-shirts. I mean, again, I cannot reinforce enough, this is not the way. If you go to Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Dallas, St. Louis, you do not see stuff like this. This is in what is supposed to be a conference room in the admin offices, but we're using it for storage. This is our fire safety trailer. It is stored along with bus stops and recycle containers and garbage carts at Lowry Street. This is a 1924 American LaFrance antique fire apparatus. I don't know if it was our first, but one of our first motorized fire apparatus being stored under a tarp at Lowry Street with garbage cans. That is all I have. I'll take any questions.
And Chief, in addition to the questions, what I will say, so Chief gave you a little bit of the history of kind of the public safety model that existed until the 1980s. And I will say this, and Chief will shake his head and agree, for a very long time, the fire department and the city in general prided itself on being what we called the most efficient service delivery model in the state. And that is a buzzword to mean the cheapest service delivery model in the state. A reflection of some of the facilities we have and the staffing that we have is that prior councils and staff were more interested in saving money and very interested in what the tax rate was instead of expanding the tax rate, adding facilities and positions and such. So Chief and I have talked about this, where we are today is a reflection of where we have been in the past, decisions made by prior administrations and elected officials, and you don't get into something overnight and you don't get out of it overnight either. And so to that extent, we know that we have been here for some time. We could show you benchmarking and performance data that started back in the 90s that suggests all that we have been, again, much cheaper per capita, per tax base, any of the ways that you standardize data for that. I will say also, some of the things that Chief has shown you, we've had some of those conversations and do hope that through our capital planning processes, we are able to remedy some of the things that they currently have noted as issues. But we'll turn it back over and let you ask Chief any questions you have there. But I just want to kind of give you a little contextual note. This is not a new thing for the fire department. This is something that we have. When I say we, I mean the city over the course of many decades has built, and it is where it is at this point. Fred, you're on mute if you're trying to say something.
Sorry, I thought I clicked the unmute. I've got a couple sort of broad questions here. It seems like most of what you described were sort of capital needs and expenses. It seems like there's a lot of it. Are there also operating needs as well? And that's one question. Second question, how does let me see a good way to phrase this. How do these capital needs affect sort of service response times and things like that? Are we deficient compared to, say, Greensboro or Raleigh in terms of sort of providing service that would need extra, that would need things to be improved? Those are kind of general questions, I know, but that's what I'm curious about.
So the answer to your question is yes. operationally, we are so there is something called the fire suppression rating schedule. And it is the model that insurance companies use to assess fire departments. And then they assess that's how they set your insurance rates. So for property and casualty insurance, those rates are largely dependent on the insurance company's assessment of the fire department. And we are, by the fire suppression rating schedule, we should have 24 engines and 8 ladder companies in service. And we have 19 engines and 5 ladder companies in service. We are probably 130 or 40 personnel smaller than we should be. I would tell you that Greensboro, I could write a 1-page essay on why I think the Greensboro Fire Department is a little bit fatter than they really need to be. Most people assume that Raleigh is the second largest fire department in the state, and they are not. Greensboro is the second largest fire department in the state, although Raleigh probably is 120 or 30,000 population larger than Greensboro is. But just for comparison, our minimum daily staffing, Chief Hardison, nod your head. I can't ever remember if it's 89 or 92. I know we've adjusted it. 89 or 92?
89.
89. So we will not operate with fewer than 89 people on duty every day. So we refer to that as our minimum staffing number. Greensboro's minimum staffing number is 151. So that just gives you an idea of how much smaller we are relative to Greensboro is our closest peer city in terms of square mileage and population in the state. From a capital standpoint, yes, our deployment model is very largely dictated by our facilities. For example, I think the most egregious example is at Station 14, which is on the east end of Chatelaine Drive. They're just off its 3 or 4 address points off of University. If you're northbound on University, you turn left on Chatelaine, and there's a fire station right there on the left. That is a public safety legacy station that was designed for 2 people and an engine, and we have 7 people minimum and an engine and a ladder in there. And that ladder that is in that station is undersized, and we do not receive full insurance credit for it because it is so small. And it is so small because that is the largest piece of apparatus that will go in that building, and the door is shut on either side of it. So we suffer from that around the city is we have apparatus and crews not in always the most ideal location, but in the facility where they will fit and the doors will shut. Mr. Salisbury, did I answer your questions fully? Beautifully answered. That does lead to a follow-up question I have, though. So you said that the fire, basically, how insurance consider the fire department affects our insurance rates. Has anybody ever estimated how much money taxpayers would save on insurance in the city if the fire department was better? We have. That would be a great thing to sell people on, raising taxes, taxes, insurance goes down. Yes, sir. So a couple of things about that. It's interesting you ask, and I appreciate the question. It has always been so fire departments are assessed on a 10-point scale, with 10 being no fire protection and 1 being the best fire protection as determined by the fire suppression ratings schedule. It has always been accepted that when a fire department falls below a public protection class of 6. So when you get to 6, when you go toward a 1 and get better in the view of the fire suppression rating schedule, it was generally accepted that residential property owners did not realize any insurance savings benefits from that. When I was in graduate school, and I hate to tell you how long ago that's been because I don't like to think about it, but I did one semester, we had an assignment to do a cost benefit analysis. And I was working for the Raleigh Fire Department at the time. I asked the fire chief, I said, is there something I can do to be beneficial? Now I've got to do this work, but may as well do something to benefit the organization. He said, yeah, look at the benefits of, Raleigh was a class 3 fire department at the time. Look at the benefits of us going to a class 2 fire department. And I did that. And what I found is what we have assumed for many, many years is not accurate. That in fact, when a fire department goes below 6, so down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, there are savings at each step of 3 to 5% on insurance premiums going as you go down, between each step. So when you look at that over the total value of real estate, residential real estate and commercial, because we know commercial is getting a benefit when we go down in public protection class. That there is a significant savings when you tally all that together with a city with as much real estate in it as Winston-Salem has. The other thing I would tell you about the public protection class rating is in the past 6 to 10 years, we have seen a noticeable improvement in public protection class ratings for fire departments in North Carolina. I mean, for many, many years, Greensboro was the only class 1 fire department in the state and one of probably 2 dozen in the country. But now I would have to get an updated list. There are probably 25 or 30 class 1 fire departments in the state. And we're getting down to municipalities like Statesville and Hickory and Apex, Rocky Mount, Wilson, that class of city. And Winston-Salem remains as a class 2 fire department because we do not have enough staff and we do not have enough ladder trucks in service.
Thank you.
I have a question. And again, thank you for your presentation. As we know that saying a picture is like 1,000 words, but when we were there a couple of years ago visiting the facilities, we saw basically what are in those pictures. My question is, has the council, have they actually visited those locations to see the disarray, the disorder, and the impact of your quality of service to the public?
We have a couple of council members who have done ride-alongs with us, but if you didn't do a ride-along at Station 5, you wouldn't see the shop. If you didn't do a ride-along at Station 19, you wouldn't see turnout gear shoved in mechanical rooms and closets and crooks and crannies. So I would tell you that I think the most accurate answer to that question is the council has not seen these spaces and needs on a broad scale. We have, for example, for the 2018 bond package, we proposed additional training facilities. We proposed burn and medical labs at the Beatty facility. We proposed replacing the fire maintenance facility and replacing Fire Station 14 and other capital needs. But how much of those requests from departments the council actually saw, I cannot answer that question intelligently.
I will answer that this way and say that I don't know that all the council members are going to get out and see every facility in person that we have, and it's incumbent upon staff to be able to do that. As part of each of the last couple of bond packages, there has been about a 200 or 300 page book that we put together, and it includes every request, or has in the past, that departments have put pictures, maps, and those kinds of things. Now, it will obviously not include anywhere near the extent of photographs that Chief has got here. So you're talking, it has, here's the project name, description, amount, and maybe a picture or two And if it were recreation centers and maintenance, you'd have seen like pictures of the tennis courts and parks and those kinds of things. And so for, a facility, it would have just showed chief knows this, the outside of the facility, nothing detailed in the inside of that kind of thing. So to that extent, when we get to that, council does get information on it, but in terms of being eyes on everything, there are, when you look at the last unfunded list that we put together, there were more than $1 billion worth of requests in it. Now that includes almost $700 million worth of new road projects, intersections, sidewalks, and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of requests. And so what we get towards is the prioritization of those. And Chief has hit on a couple of his priorities. And those are things that we know about in budget, that council knows about, that are at the top of the list. Of apparatus maintenance facility is one of those, and it's been on the list for a while. Even before the Chief Mayo was here, his predecessor had that at the top of the list, and so we continue to know that that is a need for the fire department. Absolutely. I will also note there are some interesting questions here. Chief and staff will be coming back again to do another presentation about operations. And so as we get into kind of the operations staffing and response times, I think you'll probably have more questions about those as well. And he'll be able to answer those and kind of go through some of that data with a presentation next month too. So I don't want to sell short. This is not the only opportunity that you'll have to look at this. We've broken apart into a couple of sessions here so that we could talk about divisions separately and kind of the data points for those separately. Other questions for the chief or his staff on what you have seen today? So what I will do is I will drop down here and say, from what the chief has shown you, I have taken some notes here. And again, we will continue again next month with another presentation and start thinking about how some of this information comes together. If you want us to look at some additional benchmarking data that we've got, we can provide some charts and things. But thematically, what we've started with here is personnel and specific issues. So the staffing level in comparison to our peer groups. Obviously, storage, as Chief has shown you around the city, there are multiple smaller storage facilities, areas where they need things to be in air-conditioned and heated, ventilated units that are not. You've started to ask some questions about response data. And again, I think we'll get into response times. Chief, I'm gonna look at you and get ahead now, first in times, effective response force, travel, turnout, all those kind of things. I think you'll include when looking at operations, and even can talk about dispatch time and all that kind of stuff, just to the extent that you can talk about the process. We'll probably hit that next month. And then I think at the end, we'll probably have a conversation about prioritization too. The chief is going to show you a lot of stuff in some places that, again, we have had lower staffing ratios for many decades. And the facilities have maybe not been approved or maintained to the extent that we could have previously. And I will say this, and Chief knows that this is not a fire department thing. If we were to have William Royston, our recreation director, he could have shown you 100 pictures of rec centers and things, rec centers that were built in the 1960s that have outlived their useful lives as well. It's not something that's unique to the fire department. And in many cases, when we talk to our peers, there are a lot of facilities across the board where local government needs to do a better job in maintaining what we have. Our new city manager, if he were here, would say that at the top of his priority list is employee compensation, as we currently have a class and comp study going, but that equipment replacement, which Chief will talk about too, as well as facility and maintenance needs, are at the top of his list. Maintaining our assets and providing a high quality level of service before expanding service is really at the top of his list of things. So I know personnel and storage. Again, we'll talk about response data potentially next month. And then after having several conversations with the chief and his staff, begin to look at some of that data more maybe in kind of, visual format and how you might put it in your report, and talk about some prioritization. Anything else that you've got for the chief? And like I said, Chief, it's operations. And what else are we looking at next month?
The fire and life safety branch.
Okay. So we'll bring you that data and information. And then kind of round out that conversation, and probably meet in March to start talking a little more formally about what you've seen, And if there are other areas that you want us to do some independent research as well, be it the fire chief and budget combined, we'll get something back to you. So any other questions, concerns, issues, things that you would like to make sure are on the agenda for next month, other than what we've got with the two divisions that chief is planning to show you?
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Sheila.
You were talking about the list of things that are presented to council to review and determine how we're going to fund and what we're going to fund. How do they get ranked for council to look at? Especially, I guess, I might go into the numbers on 300 million that's not roads related.
Sheila, I am having a really hard time understanding you. It's very muffled.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me better if I hold this in?
Not really. If you could type it into the chat, I'd be more than happy to answer your question there. I'm sorry about that. It's just a little muffled. I'll pull my chat up here so that we can see it.
Scott, I don't see chat. Don't worry about it.
You don't see a chat option? Well, I can hear you now. Try it. Let's try that again.
So I was asking, I think you said about 300 million beyond roads that gets presented to council. How did they get ranked or presented to council so that they do comparison contracts?
So if I hear you correctly, the question is for the unfunded needs, when we go to look at what capital priorities are across the city, how do those get ranked? And so over time, that has been done differently. I will say generally what has happened is there has been a citizens capital needs committee that takes a first look at that. So council will appoint a committee of, I think it's roughly 9 people. Departments submit all of their requests through budget and management. Those are combined. That Citizens Capital Needs Committee in the past would have looked at that list and made some recommendations, would have come back to the manager's office. The manager's office would have worked and put a package together for council to review. Council would have spent several months working through their priorities as well, prioritizing across service areas. I will say one of the more interesting things, and I've had this conversation with a new city manager, we in the city have tended to do these very large multi-service level bond packages where when you went to the voting precinct in 2014 or 18, you saw a referendum for housing, a referendum for economic development, a referendum for public safety, one for recreation, and one for streets and sidewalks. And we have habitually done these large $130, $140 million packages in 5 service areas. Some of our sister cities, we'll call them, don't do that the same way. They will do, Greensboro will do, here, $80 million for housing. We're going to put that on the bond referendum. And then 2 or 4 years later, you'll see $30 million for recreation and parks. And then 2 years later, you'll see another $40 million for public safety. So the model that we've used in the past may not be the same model that we use going forward, but traditionally there would have been this amalgamation of all of those unfunded requests and needs, a review by a citizen group, vetting by the management team, and then ultimately council would have several months to review that and work through it as well. So I think the question is, from a capital perspective, realistically, what is the mix of, as the chief has shown you today, a lot of those are not new things, right? Rebuilding a maintenance facility, it's a new facility to you, but it's just a replacement of a current facility. And so the conversations going forward with the management team are going to be focused a lot on what are our replacement needs in terms of capital planning for facilities that are aging out, rather potentially than service expansions, i.e. building new parks and new rec centers and those types of things. But yeah, it is a process where we'll bring in kind of our planning department. We'll look at what the future growth needs are to the extent we can. But I think the next series, or if it's one large bond package, you will see will probably be heavily focused on current asset replacement and renovation and major maintenance needs, as opposed potentially to significant service level enhancements and adding things. And that's a reflection of some of what the chief has shown you here. There are some needs over time that haven't been met in those areas. But ultimately, and I will always default to this, the city council is responsible for making that ultimate decision. The package that the management team puts in front of city council is but merely a draft, and they are allowed to make their changes to it and are ultimately subject to the voters and what the needs of their constituencies are in their wards as well. So a very long answer to a short question. Apologize, Sheila. Other issues, comments, concerns, things that you want to get out for the good of the order? All right, I will say, I do believe we was here if we wanted to, Fred, take a quick vote if everyone had read the minutes and wanted to approve the minutes from the prior meeting, just to get that bureaucratically out of the way.
I move to approve the minutes. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, raise their hand or say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
All right, unanimous approval of the prior minutes for the prior meeting. The last thing on the agenda is simply letting you know when the next scheduled meeting is here, closer to the end of February. Again, we will have the fire chief come back, talk about those two divisions with the appropriate staff that he has. If you have any questions or issues between now and then, feel free to shoot me an email and we will try to get you information in advance of that meeting. But we will get the minutes from this one out, as well as an agenda and a Zoom link prior to that meeting, just like we normally do.
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely. Chief, is this presentation substantially similar to what you sent us? You didn't make any changes to it, did you?
I did not. It's identical.
How about a copy of the presentation from November?
We can put that together as well. Absolutely. We'll send that out in a package after this meeting.
Good, great, thank you.
Awesome. Absolutely.
But is it time to go to call for an adjournment?
I believe so.
Anyone opposed? See you on the 21st.
All right.
Thank you. See you, everyone.
Thanks, chief.
Thank you.